What's happening, gang? I hope you're well. God, this is exciting, isn't it? Isn't this exciting? Slee Raw taking you all through what would be like a new starter setup, I suppose. Very exciting. Anyway, getting stuck in. So, as promised by myself and Madeline the Tank Bishop, soon to be Slee Raw Fearless, we are going to go through my first check-in under the watchful eye of Raw coaching. So I think now is probably a good time to explain to you all that since the situation, another health scare last week with my heart, myself and Mr. Joe Jeffries are no longer going to be working together. Now, let me just explain to you all why. It is nothing to do with Joe at all. Fundamentally goal specific and my needs at this very moment in time, and priority has to be my health. And I was very much in the knowledge that because all I really have to do as a priority at this very moment in time is pull my weight back. Joe is very, very much underutilized with me as an athlete at this very moment in time, and I've got far too much respect for him, his knowledge, his ability to ask him to run me through a simple calorie deficit and implement a little bit of cardio. So the analogy I gave was having Joe watch over me to do that would be like having a Ferrari on the drive and taking my push bike to the shops. It's very, very much a waste of potentially his time. Although he'd be more than happy to do it, I've got far too much respect to ask him to do it. So there we go. So that's what we're going to be doing moving forward. I'm going to be managing myself through this phase with obviously Mads as well to help watch over Slee and make sure that I'm doing everything as I should be and I'm not slipping my hand into the cookie jar, which would never happen, obviously. So I'm going to take you guys through exactly where we are, exactly what we're doing, and exactly how we are moving forward. So a couple of changes, first and foremost, are going to be obviously around my training, around my nutrition. Training specifically, with Joe, previously I was running reps in reserve, which I found a fantastic insight into a new way to really drive muscle stimulus and that adaptation response that we want to see from training. Is something that I have always, I think, turned a blind eye to, or potentially not really invested into 100% as an option to train, purely because if it's not broken, don't fix it. But the insight that I got to a new style of training that really held me accountable to the quality of the work that I was putting in on a day-by-day basis was fantastic. What I have decided to turn to as an option for training moving forward is a simple progressive overload approach. Reason for that is because reps and reserve, through my understanding and my experience, guarantees maximum accumulated fatigue, which is absolutely fantastic and what we want. We almost go to a point of overreaching through training blocks and mesocycles, and what will be a hindrance for me moving forward as a biological individual is I need to be in a position where I don't drive myself past the point of fatigue where it could be potentially detrimental to overall stress on my body. So going back to progressive overload and managing my fatigue on a week by week basis until I can determine where my fatigue threshold sits is more important and probably a better outlook for me as an individual at this very moment in time going forward on this journey moving forward. Obviously, there's also different elements and variables coming into play as well. One in particular will be cardio. In the past would struggle to run to the car if it was raining, let alone do any form of direct cardio. Obviously, I consider myself as a relatively big guy, and it's very rare you see anybody in and around the 120 kilo mark doing sprints on a treadmill. So that's a new element that I'm going to have to deal with as an individual. So having a full handle on my fatigue as a whole, and a full vision and understanding of where I sit in that tolerance range is super, super important for me. So I'll tell you what, let's just get stuck in of where we are. So let's go to Slee Raw's journey plan. Now, it's been mapped out over the next 12 weeks, and I've given myself this 12-week period of time, most importantly, so because in 12 weeks' time, I'm going to be getting married to my lovely other half. She's such a lucky girl. But most importantly, to be fair, she'll probably have more muscle and be bigger than me by that time. But most importantly, I've got myself a 12-week window here where I'm going to be in a deficit phase. I'm going to slowly start to pull my weight down. And during that time, I'll be in a position where, obviously, with an introduction of this new training setup, this week I've used as number one, obviously, off the back of Friday. I didn't want to go balls to the wall training, but I'm also of an understanding that because it's a new setup of training altogether, my priority was to reset my numbers, get myself in a position where I was of full understanding where my strength capacity was as well. So hopefully next week I'll be straight out the starting gates and ready to rock and roll. So again, as I said, this training block will be an interesting one because I don't know where my levels of fatigue sit with this new training setup and split that I've got, which I'll show you in a minute. So for now, training will just be full volume until I can feel myself start to accumulate an unproductive amount of fatigue, and then I'll be in a position where I can say, right, I can run on these training blocks for 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks until I hit a brick wall. So I'll tell you what, let's implement a deload here so I don't overreach and be in a position where potentially it's unproductive for me. And my progression, it's better to catch it early rather than take it too far and spend too much time having to regain freshness and wash off that fatigue that I really can't afford to have, to be perfectly honest with you. So daily routine is as so. My objective at this very moment in time is still exactly the same from a training standpoint. There are still weak areas that I carry that I plan on competing again. I'm still living with that as a reality. Obviously I can't guarantee that, nothing is guaranteed, but if that is going to be the case, and again, going back to Joe, I want to make sure that although I'm managing my own diet because it's a very, very simple process and he is underutilized, I want to make sure that I'm still in a position of being able to progress, and although I'm going to be pulling my weight down, it's more of a case of moving muscle round and ensuring that I am a more balanced and better physique as a whole. So things that I need to bring up in particular are obviously everything through the posterior, as I'm sure many of you will agree if you look at any pictures of myself. Bring up the hamstrings and glutes, and also give myself some double Ds as well. Through the top line will be a very, very appreciated. So I won't go through training specifically. I'll update you all on this through Instagram and as we go, but this is how sort of volume is broken down. Obviously increased volume breakdown in hams and glutes, and then obviously through the top line, through the chest and delts. I'm not going to be hitting back an awful lot, apart from obviously a heavy pull, which I will have in, and also obviously some super accurate work through the lats and upper back as well. Nutrition. So I've set myself up on a balanced standpoint, and again, I won't keep you all for all of this, but just to show you how sort of simplistic my diet will be moving forward. It's not a million miles off where it was prior to my heart attack, where I have pulled my calories down a tad, but then just set myself up with a balanced energy standpoint throughout the day. So we've got carbs in every single meal. My fats are relatively low at this moment in time, just to see obviously where my body goes, but it's not a massive priority for me at this moment in time. I just need to be in a position where I've got consistent food throughout the day, enabling me to sort of operate and move on a day-to-day basis with the implementation of things like obviously steps, cardio, which we will go through here. So your boy Slee is going to be hitting some hit. Hybrid Slee, would you fucking believed it? So I'm going to be running just slow and steady, understanding that, guys, anyone starting off on a dieting phase, whether you're prepping, whether you're prepping for a show, whether you're trying to pull your weight back because you're a little bit too heavy like Slee, due to health reasons, or whether you just want to lose some fat, you need to give yourself as much of a runway as possible. And fundamentally, obviously, I couldn't physically start off on an enormous amount of expenditure because I'd be in a very, very deep hole very, very quickly. But anybody starting off on a diet or trying to create themselves a calorie deficit through decreased food, a little bit of expenditure introduced, you want to be in a position where you start off slow and steady. So for me, just 3 lots of 12 minutes on HIIT, 1 minute on, 1 minute off is absolutely plenty at this very moment in time. And we'll go through my daily tracker in a minute, but we'll see how my weight has started to trickle down over the course of this week, nice and slowly. But again, I am only on Saturday. I started this on Monday, so everyone loves to start a diet on Monday, don't they? So I started this on Monday, so we'll really be able to assess over the coming weeks where my weekly average of weight is going. So I'm not overly concerned about where we are on a day-to-day basis. Into PEDs, obviously, you all know that as a baseline, as I've discussed, I'm running at 150 meg of test per week just to maintain a physiological amount of test. I didn't want to be in a position off the back of what happened in January where I crashed through the floor and I wasn't able to maintain any kind of physiological balance within my body. So 150 mega test is holding me just at the sort of upper edge of physiological range, and I seem to be in a very, very good place. I feel relatively healthy, although what happened last week was a bit of a scare, and then along with these pathways, which we can discuss another time. So here we are. Started the week at 117, weighed in this morning at 116.2. So at this very moment in time, I'm sat at a whopping 116.5 kilos. And this is how we look. Boom. Look at him. It looks like I've got a fucking tea cozy on my head. So I'm actually relatively pleased with how we're looking this week. Again, I can be my own worst critic, but it's important that I look at my own standpoint, and the reason why people don't tend to coach themselves is because you're emotionally invested, which means that you can make emotionally invested decisions, which is why it's always good to have a coach. But again, I've been doing this for a long enough time that we can sort of see the wood from the trees, not get overly emotional about where my weight is and where my look is, understanding that this is a process, and I'm not going to check in this week looking exactly how I want to. But we can obviously see from the visuals a relatively good amount of conditioning coming through the legs. To be fair, separation is actually quite good there. Go on, Silly. Midsection is looking relatively tight. I'm not overly full, but training stimulus obviously wasn't really there this week. Not seeing an enormous amount of sort of training inflammation. And sort of intramuscular sort of fullness. But yeah, I think I'm relatively sort of happy with where the boy is at this very moment in time. Relatively tight through the back. Still got a gigantically fat ass. I wish it was that big when I fucking prepped, I tell you. There we go. Look, the Sammy Williams coming out in me. This whole front double bicep. Onto the side chest. Oh, through the back. Look at that ass. Yeah, so that's fundamentally where we are at this very moment in time, guys. Again, as promised, I'll take you through. Probably will be a bit of a shorter update in weeks to come, purely and simply because this is the first time we're doing it. But this is where we are. This is what we're looking like. Operation Hybrid Slee is very much a go, but I'm happy. Sat 116.5 kilos this week and smiling. So thank you all very much for watching. If any of you got any questions for me on what I am doing on sort of a more personal note, DMs are always open, as you know. Anyone that's ever dropped me a message has been probably a little bit surprised how open and honest I can be about these situations. If you are in a similar position, or you're on a dieting phase, or you want some advice or help with how you sort of structure yours, let me know, and I'll always be here to answer any questions. But I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the weekend, and see you next post or see you next check-in. Love, guys. Peace.